Hello, welcome back to the Inside Elland Road podcast with me, Joe Donoghue, and YEP chief football writer Graham Smith. It was a draw at the weekend. A draw. How dare they draw? Leeds were held by West Bromwich Albion at Elland Road. A frustrating affair, but not the end of the world. And in fact, a continuation of the unbeaten run in the league, which now stands at 17 games. Leeds did look a touch desperate towards the end as they went in search of a winner. And personally, I don't mind that. This team do go for the jugular. They don't settle for less than 3 points. And it's a great mentality to have heading into the final 10 or 11 games of the season. Graham, how did you see Saturday's game?
From the West Stand in the press box, as per usual.
Through those frames on the front of your face? Yep.
Yeah. What if, the way you say that, it's not the end of the world. What if that did end one world and we slipped into an alternative world, right, where Leeds don't go up simply because they drew a game?
Yes, sci-fi and fantasy is not quite my topic. Don't usually go for those. I'm very much a based on a true story film kind of man.
Yeah.
One universe is enough for me.
I'm rooted in realism, gritty realism. And I don't think that a draw against West Brom is a bad result at all, actually. It's their usual result. They draw a lot of games. Didn't they have a run? Did we discuss it last week where they had a run of like 12
games? They drew 10 of them.
Yeah. Sensational. Yeah, that's not top two form, but 17 unbeaten, winning 5 and drawing 1. That is top two form. It's fine.
It is, yeah. You look at the full championship table. Preston have drawn 16, and West Brom have drawn 16. So they are the two teams this season who've drawn the most. And probably quite tellingly for West Brom, they've only lost 7. For context, Sheffield United have lost 6. So
yeah, they're
difficult to beat, and they're playing better under Tony Mowbray. Certainly in the early stages of his managerial tenure there, for was it the second or third stint he's had. I wasn't overly concerned by what we saw. It was a relatively even game that again Leeds probably edged. Junior Firpo getting on the score sheet again, more than happy to see that. It was all broadly fine, and
it was a lovely header.
Yeah, I really like the movement beforehand as well.
Yeah,
he's kind of playing as a left-sided number 10 almost, and then he drifts into the box. He's always looking for that cross, which is again great to have as an additional attacking outlet.
Yeah, the presence in the box has at times been lacking this season because Peru doesn't play as an out-and-out 9. He's not often found crashing the 6-yard box when a ball flashes across the area, and sometimes when crosses come in, he hasn't quite anticipated or he hasn't quite been there. Aronson's not really that physical presence you want attacking balls in the area. Firpo's a really nice addition, because as our colleague Dan Sheridan pointed out to me, when they play that big diagonal or they play a long ball, they pick the wrong side when they go to the left because Firpo wins so many headers. He's very, very good in the air, and that's been borne out in an offensive sense in the last couple of weeks, really, really nicely. But I just thought the cross was great. Dan James had found himself on the left a couple of times in the first few minutes, and made no attempt to go back to the right. And Solomon kind of played inside him as a 10, and then Firpo thought, well, I'll go and play as a left-sided number 9 then, and makes that run. Great cross in, lovely header. Still preferred the one at Bramall Lane, I think, just for the sheer drama and the power on it. But different headers for different needs.
Again, if we're going back to the sounds of things like we were on last week's podcast, the Sheffield United header would have been one which was like a thud, an oof, whereas the West Brom one would have been more of a sort of like a clink, as you sort of like tap the side of a champagne glass.
Oh yes, that's lovely. Love that.
Yeah. Also, I would like to say we did receive a comment on last week's episode, which I had already seen, and Graham took great delight in bringing it to my attention. But because we're very honest on this podcast, and we front up to when we've made errors. We did have a comment from Lee. I certainly hope this isn't our colleague Lee, but Lee said, "Joe, peak amplitude is the loudest part of the sound, mate. Nothing to do with pitch. Stick to Euro nerding. Obviously not the sound nerd you claim to be, lol. Just kidding, nerd on, dude. And I thought, you know what, Lee, that's absolutely fair enough. You've explained it well. You've explained it to someone who thought he was very intelligent. And you've ended it nicely. They're the comments we love. There's some that
you
we
are
don't
right.
love.
We will. If I ever make a mistake, I will front up on this podcast if that day comes.
Right. We'll reserve an episode for the end of the season for all of the things which you've got grossly incorrect over the course of the season, and we'll set them to right. I mean, there wasn't really a great deal to discuss about the game, the West Brom. I mean, you were fascinated by what Tony Mowbray had to say afterwards, firing out a few lines that on the basis of what Mowbray had to say. What did you take from the old soldier?
The old soldier, he's great, is Tony Mowbray. Really worth listening to. Really like him. A lot of time for him. He's obviously very fond of Leeds United and Elland Road. He was at the stadium as a guest of the club earlier in the season, and I think they might have signed him out. I'm almost certain they signed him out about Joe Rothwell before they signed him. Just before he came into the presser, actually, I could hear him saying, "You're right, Joe, lad," and exchanging pleasantries, and then saying, "I'll give you a bell in the next couple of days if that's all right," for a catch up, which I thought was lovely. I mean, of course, it might have been Joe Rodon, but probably not. It's probably Joe Rothwell. Nice guy and a wise old owl to listen to. And I thought it really interesting, the stuff he said about, it was almost like a conversation with the press. He was saying, you're the journalist, you know better than me what they'll do, but what are Leeds going to do? Are they going to go with this team and probably get relegated by February? Or he didn't mean it like that. Like, he wasn't digging this team out. He was basically saying, like, what can you do? You go up like the teams did last year. You go up and then you barely win a game. And somebody had said to him, talking about West Brom and their playoff aspirations, be careful what you wish for, because you might be 10 games into next season and without a job because you haven't scored a goal or won a game. So you have to go and spend 200 million. And he said, what are Leeds going to do? They're going to spend 200 million and give themselves half a chance. And he said it almost in a kind of, that's in a despondent kind of, this is modern football way, pointing out the huge gulf that there is between the two divisions and how you can be a very, very good team at this level, which Leeds plainly are, but at the level above, you can be found drastically, just so depressingly wanting. So that was interesting to think about. And in terms of the sum of money that Leeds might need to spend this summer, if, as we expect, you're looking at 6-7 new players, probably 6-7 new starters, really. I mean, that's not even being dramatic, is it?
How much do you think they need to spend realistically? Actually, a trio of questions. How much do you think they need to spend? How much do you think they'll spend? And where do they need to spend?
Okay.
Assuming that automatic promotion is achieved come the end of the season.
So if we arrogantly assume that the league is already sewn up, despite having that many games to go.
Well, no, because you know what? If they played every game like the Sunderland and Sheffield United games, then we would be able to fill an hour's worth of podcasting with stuff exclusively about the game. Unfortunately, 1-1 draws at Elland Road, in which nothing material happens. We've got to look at the bigger picture. We've got to be a bit more abstract.
Yeah,
so I've given you a little bit more thinking time there as well, just like the excellent co-host.
Haven't even got into the bus crash yet. Well, all they have to do really is buy 7 Autanakas. How much would that set them back? 21 million pounds? I mean, there you go. You're set. Unfortunately, Autanakas and the like probably going to cost a wee bit more this summer when you're looking for Premier League players, and you might find a gem or two. You might find a Rafinha, who's 17 million. I mean, these things do happen. Rafinha, we always saw as a bit of a unicorn, but then they went and found Tanaka. So there are bargains out there, but the horrific thing is that you can spend 20 million on a player and find out he's not a Premier League player. Leeds have been there before. The recruitment in the Premier League was not good enough, and players did not pass the character test, I suppose, if you will, and they didn't passed the quality test, despite some of them costing upwards of 20 million. So I don't know what we're saying. An average of 20, 25 million if you're talking about 6 starters. So
I think you're saying there you can sign a player for 20 million and he's not Premier League standard, or he's not a Premier League player. Leeds have found in the past that you can sign a player for £24.5 million and he actually doesn't then become a Leeds United player, as they found with Jean-Kevin Augustin.
yeah.
You know, not saying that that's going to happen this time. I think they've very much learned their lesson. But the point you make is right. And I was looking at what the sort of business Brighton did last summer. And I know Brighton have become an established Premier League club now. They've been up there almost 10 years. But they spent 25 million plus on 6 different players. And you look at the money that they've brought in from player sales to basically allow them to be able to do that. Their chief executive, Paul Barber, was saying, we were in an uncomfortable position doing that. I think he used the term the high tide mark was the 40 million for Jorginho Rutter and slightly less for João Pedro. It's a big ask to go up and say, right, we need 6 starters, each worth 20 to 25 million, because I mean, you then have to get them up to speed with how the manager wants them to play. They have to gel with the teammates. They have to buy into what it is to be Leeds. It's a very, very difficult task. And I suppose this time around, again, arrogantly assuming that automatic promotion is on the horizon, they don't have the unifying aspect of, Marcelo Bielsa elevating, or a rising tide lifts all boats, to sort of stick with that theme. They don't have the unifying aspect of Marcelo Bielsa has basically given us, i.e. the players, the opportunity of a lifetime. We're going to play out of our skin. You can't guarantee that this time around.
No, you cannot. I think we're in for a big old summer. If Leeds go up, I think, well, we're in for a big old summer either way. But if they go up, I think they're going to need to do significant recruitment. They can't do it on the cheap, so that's not an option. And you only have to look at this year's Premier League table to see. I don't only want to focus on the bottom end of the table because that is super depressing. But you look at who's actually making it work. Look at who's actually making. I know that every club, other than about 6, start the season thinking, bloody hell, let's not get relegated this season, because they know it's a possibility. But it's so much more of a possibility when you're the promoted team. But look at what Villa have done. Look at what Forest are doing. You can make it stick. Look at what Leeds would have done had they adequately backed and had the resources to back Bielsa with the new players he needed after that amazing first season. When the squad was so desperately in need of a refresh and players were starting to creak a bit and crack a bit. And also teams were a bit more humble in the way they played against Leeds in the second and third season. Second season against Marcelo Bielsa's Leeds. Because in that first season, I don't think a lot of coaches or teams changed much about their the playing style, because they thought, no, we have our principles, we stick to them. And then Bielsa's Leeds completely blitzed them in the running stats and in the intensity and played some lovely football along the way. It took the Premier League a long time to get to grips with Bielsa's Leeds, but in that summer where they really missed the opportunity and they only brought in, I think, was it Firpo and James, when they needed an awful lot more. And that just kind of just shows that there's a possibility there. It will be a struggle if they go up to stay up the first season, because it always is. But you can set yourself on a platform, and I think it's going to take quite a big expenditure to do that this summer. I wouldn't even like to put a figure on it. I think it's an eye-watering sum that they're going to need to spend, unless they fall upon 4 or 5 unicorn signings.
If Leeds came to you and said, Graham, with your expertise in non-league and in South Yorkshire and Derbyshire, we'd love to pick your brain for a bit of recruitment work, would you take them up on that?
No. I am not being the man blamed for. I've seen how it goes for people blamed for bad recruitment. It's not the life for me.
So you just blamed for bad ratings then?
Yeah, I'll take that. I'll happily take the blame for an entirely inconsequential piece of content that goes out almost on the stroke of full time every week without a second glance at the game.
Do
I'll take that.
call it an inconsequential piece of content, because it does a lot for us. Keeps us all in a job. If people start thinking that you don't give the granular attention and focus to the ratings as you give to some of your longer reads, what would happen then? God
Listen, Joe,
forbid if somebody thought that it wasn't actually you uploading the ratings yourself, and it was one of your minions who has to do that because you're on with more important things.
I think people understand that there are levels to
There's
journalism,
a hierarchy.
to journalism, as they are with everything. If you were advising Leeds, what markets would you go shopping in? Where would you go shopping this summer?
You've got to think about Farke's 3 criteria, don't you? Which are affordability, character, and quality, i.e., improving the starting 11. I think you can't rule out Germany, because Farke does have that's where Tanaka came from. Not originally. Ilya Gruev, yeah, of course. I think you've got to look at Germany. Top half of the Bundesliga, I want to say. If you're looking to improve that starting 11, I'd also be looking at maybe like the top 3 or 4 in the Netherlands and Belgium. Maybe not looking any further down than that, unless there's a real standout player. Scandinavia is probably too much of a risk, too much of a step up. We've seen that with Lucas Bergvall at Spurs. He was excellent in Scandinavia, but and while he has done all right at Tottenham, he's not quite there yet, Premier League ready. I'd say as well Spain, but again, you're looking at top half clubs. Maybe down to about 14th in the table there. I'm not sure France is the play, because I don't think that's the level of competition that can match the Premier League. Certainly below Paris Saint-Germain. I mean, Marseille, you don't really want to be buying anyone from there. Lyon, to be fair, you could go to Lyon and say, look, you are in financial straits, dire straits, Sultans of Swing, and you could say, look, we want to try and help you out there.
So you're saying, you said top what in the Bundesliga? Top 6,
top half.
So top half. So you're saying like an Eintracht Frankfurt. You're saying you want a Robin Koch, or you want a Rasmus Christensen. Is that what you're saying you want?
Where are Frankfurt in the table?
4th, I think.
3rd. Yeah, look, I'm not saying just because one player is at one club that makes the entire league defunct as a shopping destination.
No, I know. I was just making a joke at your expense.
I'll tell you what I would be doing. I'd be going to Stoke and I'd be saying, right, Victor Johansson, you signed him for about 900 grand. We'll quintuple that and we'll take him.
Do you think he could do it in the Prem? I mean, I know he's very, very good at this level, but it's a big ask, isn't it?
Shot stopping.
Yeah.
Right.
But the shots at Premier League level are hard shots.
Yeah, but they're not that much harder than.
But they're not only a little bit harder, they're a little bit more accurate as well, which is twice as troublesome.
Mm-hmm. That's fair enough. But the point that I'm making is that Victor Johansson has saved, I think it's around 14 goals more than he would have been expected to save this season, which is enormous.
Yeah. How is he with his feet, with his trotters?
I don't know. He's your mate. You've interviewed him.
Yeah, but I didn't ask him what you like with your grippers.
You know what? I think as a newly promoted team, I think you probably just want to get your ducks in a row nice and early and make sure that your goalkeeper can save some shots.
Yeah. Maybe just smash it long to the big number 9 that you buy in if you have to. Yeah, I sometimes watch Match of the Day and I think, jeepers, you know what I do sometimes? I play a little game, right? So I don't tend to follow the Premier League scores very closely on match days, particularly when we're working. And then if I'm watching Match of the Day, I might know that somebody has scored, but I won't know the order that the goals come in, and I won't know as a clip starts who's about to score. And so the ball's in midfield, and I'll play a little game called "Ooh, who could score from here?" Because it feels to me like the clip could start right with Crystal Palace under pressure on the edge of their own box, and that will be when they score a beautiful goal. Because it feels like teams in the Premier League are just deadly from anywhere. Like a lot of teams in the Premier League are deadly from anywhere. The Premier League is a very scary place, and I don't know if I remember it being. I remember it being scary in the last season, certainly, and not so much fun in the middle season. But it wasn't a scary place at all in the first season. Has it got scarier? Do you reckon? Has the quality gone up? Has the gulf widened even further?
I'll tell you what has gone up, and I know this for a fact. I've got data on it. Not that I can use it on this podcast anyway. It's the intensity. The intensity has gone up exponentially. Well, maybe not yet exponentially, but it has gone up by a concerted amount, certainly since 2020, 21. Players are doing things. Players are doing more intense actions at a greater intensity for longer. So, they're sprinting more often. And there are more teams and more players capable of doing that, which is ultimately where promoted teams, I think, are coming unstuck.
Since 2021, you're saying? What could have possibly happened in 2021 in the realms of intensity that would have inspired teams to be a bit more intense? I mean, they were getting outrun by a newly promoted team then. It wouldn't surprise me, actually, if a lot of managers had thought, bloody hell, you can actually get a bit more out of footballers. Let's make them run a bit more. If they can do it, why can my lot not? But the athleticism
let's not, Graham, let's not encourage management to try and get even more out of their employees.
Listen,
that's a big no.
I'm at full Rafinha repeated sprints level right now.
I'm at Stuart Dallas levels.
I could go no further. And that's with your toes hanging off and all sorts. Yeah, it's a scary place. The athleticism is obviously a huge thing in the Premier League, and you want athletes and you want players capable of putting in that kind of work. But I wonder if Leeds might need a player or two with a bit about them in terms of being streetwise, having experience, and having been around the block. The way Brighton went and got James Milner, which to a lot of Brighton fans who have become used to them finding gems that they then polish and are then worth 50 million, that might not have been the sexiest signing, but it felt to me at the time like a very clever signing. Like, let's go and get someone who can show all these new lads what the standards are actually like to be a long-lasting Premier League quality player. The standards in terms of the way you look after yourself, your professionalism, but also just being able to come on the pitch and do good stuff.
Do you know who's an even better example of that at Brighton?
An even better example of that at Brighton than James Milner.
I'm going to say this through gritted teeth.
Oh, through gritted teeth. Go on.
Danny Welbeck.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
He's 34, but he plays as good as he ever has as a centre forward.
Yeah, he delivers in a big way for them. I mean, it helps that he's got a couple of magicians around him, like slotting passes through, like Jorginho Rutter. But this summer is going to be absolutely fascinating. But I would definitely love to see maybe one at least signing that takes this team from being a pretty young, inexperienced team, certainly in Premier League terms. I mean, there's very little experience in Premier League terms, is there? And just giving it a bit more nice and a bit more edge.
I don't know. You've got Brendan, you've got Firpo, you've got you're right. Yep.
Yes, I am right.
Maybe not necessarily the Premier League experience you want.
And also, Firpo, it wasn't the Premier League experience they wanted, that's for sure. But yeah, you might not even have Firpo.
Let's not get into that yet, because that's something for further down the line. It's not quite our topic yet in early March to be discussing Junior Firpo's contract situation. Let's let him focus on continuing to look handsome and being a considerable threat down the left-hand side for the rest of the campaign. Let's go back to the West Brom game, or rather the post-match press conference. There was a discussion online afterwards about why Laji Ramazani has been, or rather why his minutes have been limited. Now, there's an obvious explanation to that, and that's that Manor Solomon has been in excellent form, and it's very difficult to bring a player who is in a really good rhythm out of the side. But Farke went a little bit further in answering a question on that, didn't he?
Yeah, he basically explained his entire thinking about substitutes and why he only brought 2 in. He started in the midfield and said, I already have my 2 most offensive central midfielders in. And Rothwell has got set piece ability and Tanaka has got quality from distance, so you don't want to take them out. He didn't want to replace Dan James because Dan James at the minute is absolutely Dan Jamesing the Championship, and he has got a lot of goals and assists, and if something good is going to happen, he's probably going to be involved in it, and he'd already set up the goal. Didn't have his best game in terms of end product, but he set up the goal. Solomon, as you said, he's been tremendous, but when he did start to flag, he came off and he put Gnonto on, and you could see why, because Gnonto had a little bit of momentum. He'd come on against Sheffield United and not given them a second. He was straight at them. He came close to a goal, didn't he? It was from his shot that Cooper so brilliantly saved, so characteristically brilliantly saved, that Leeds then scored a goal. So he brought Gnonto in, hoping to get a little bit more of that spark from him. And he didn't want to take either fullback off because he had his most offensive fullbacks on the pitch. Bogle obviously is in this incredible partnership with James right now that you just wouldn't tinker with, because they seem to have a real understanding of who will go and when and who will overlap and where, and it just seems to be flowing and working. You wouldn't take Firpo off because he might head in another goal. He might set one up with a great cross across the front. And you're not going to take off a central defender and put on Laji Ramazani when it's 1-1 against a good West Brom team at Elland Road, and you're top of the league and you're going to go 17 unbeaten. It wasn't a game that Leeds desperately needed to win. They weren't. If they're in a losing position, maybe he takes off. I don't know who would you. I don't even know who you would take off in a losing situation. Do you take off? You don't take off Stroik because he might score from a set piece. Maybe you take off Rodon, right? And you bring on Ramazani and you put everyone up in the front, the top line. But that hasn't really paid dividends in the past. And also they weren't losing. So it's 1-1. He makes the changes he makes. He brings on Matteo for Aronson because Aronson was ineffective and struggled. And he replaced Solomon because Solomon was flagging, started to look tired. And he brought Gnonto on. There just wasn't a place for Ramazani in that game. And I understand why people are like, why are we not seeing him? Because that little spell before he got walloped against Watford at home, he was excellent. He was properly electric. He was firing goals. He was running at teams. He shows a really lovely desire to defend and go and win the ball. In fact, he wins the ball really effectively for a pint-sized attacker. So I want to see more of him too. I wanted to see more of him all season. But right now, the argument to have him in the team is smaller than he is.
Yeah, it's a fair point. And I do understand people's frustrations about not seeing him because he is an exciting player. But as you're saying, where do you bring him in? There's also the argument that, if Leeds didn't have the option to bring Ramazani on, then that would be a problem, arguably a bigger problem, because they don't have the options in depth. Depth and consistency across performances, and having 9 or 10 different goal scorers throughout the month of February. That's what ultimately gets you promoted. Everybody pitches in where they need to. When they come off, Leeds have scored, I think, the second most goals via substitutes off the bench this season. Everyone's contributing, and I know it sounds like a line that's trotted out by one of the players after a game or by Daniel Farke, but I mean it's hard to get away from it just being the truth. Ramazani will have a role to play at some point between now and the end of the season, and it's not like he's been that much of a bit part player that you'd say that his first season was a disappointment, because he has contributed, like you say, in that period before he got walloped, as you put it. I just think, yeah, there's something about, and this is not just football fans, I think it's just the population in general. We're all very reactionary. Certainly a lot more reactionary than I think we used to be. And we maybe go looking for issues where they're not, not necessarily are them, but make mountains out of molehills, so to speak.
Yeah, you have people kind of questioning: has there been a bust up? If there has been a bust up, Daniel Farke would not have picked him out for special praise for the way he celebrated at Sheffield United, and used that as an example of the togetherness of the squad. He said after Sheffield United, look at Largi Ramazani, not 1 second on the pitch. Look at the way he celebrated with his teammates. That's the togetherness that this squad has, and he credited the players for that. If there's been a bust up behind the scenes, he's not giving out that praise. He's just not. If there'd been a bust up, he's not in the squad. That it's as simple as that. I wouldn't hold any truck with that suggestion at all. And I think you're right. I think we will see him between now and the end of the season. I just think right now it's difficult to get him into the team. It probably will be between now and the end of the season that Solomon comes out of the team. I'm not sure he'll play every game between here and there. And then maybe Gnonto gets a chance, or maybe Ramazani gets a chance. But this is kind of the luxury position you're in when you've got 4 of the best wingers in the division in your squad. I think, although I did take flack from one person on Twitter saying that I was constantly digging him out and scapegoating him, I think that Aronson is the only one really that I would say his position had maybe come under more scrutiny and was more worthy of debate than certainly than the wingers, because I think Aronson's really been off it on the ball for the last few games. End products really dried up for him.
Yeah, if there's a reflection of anything, there was a social media post that was put out on the YEP's Leeds United page after the game. And it was, Leeds should try something different at number 10 during the run-in, agree or disagree. That received 69 replies. And I think on the Facebook page, that was a similar sort of number. So people are quite opinionated on that matter. I do see the merit of keeping him in the team because his effort off the ball is very important, and there's a reason that coaches keep him in there. But I think the comments that Farke made throughout January about maybe not having a different type of specialist number 10, and the sort of the overtures towards the suggestion that, well, you know what, if there was an alternative who was an out and out number 10, then I'd be playing him. It kind of does suggest that, Leeds aren't getting by with Aronson because he's got 8 goals and 2 assists, but Junior Firpo has more goal contributions than him this season. It's just not clicked for him recently. I feel like he's a bit of a confidence player, and he just needs to. Yeah, he is gonna continue to play. I think while we say Ramazani probably won't play every game, I do see Aronson playing pretty much every game. I doubt that Farke is going to change anything at this point of the season, given where they are.
He started the last 35 in a row, I think, Aronson.
That's how many games they've played this season. Yeah.
No, wait. Then 33. He started 33, came off the bench in the first 2, and then when he got into the starting team, he hasn't come out again for 33 games consecutively. Which, I'll tell you what, fair play for being that durable, because he has had little knocks in that time. He had an ankle knock that he was looking after. Very physical, demanding, grueling league, tough schedule, all of that. But he has definitely struggled for confidence, and it might just take a goal or 2 to get him back into that kind of rhythm. I guess it's a happy coincidence, really, that Leeds are getting goals from everyone else. They're getting goals from left, right, and centre, literally. Joel Pirou's been on fire of late, and Leeds haven't suffered really a consequence. But I think the die is largely cast in the number 10 position. I'd be really surprised if Farke experiments now at this stage. Mm-hmm. I think it would take an injury to Aronson for that to happen. And then, I think he'd do. I think he'd go Matteo number 9, Pirou number 10.
Yeah, I could see that happening. Particularly if Bamford returns from his injury, then you've basically got more striker cover to be able to do that with Matteo 9 and Pirou 10. Again, you know what? That's not a bad setup either, is it? With those two,
it's not particularly. It's not massively thrilling. I think people would just like, and I understand this, like something a bit unseen, a bit experimental, I suppose. Can be quite exciting. What if we discover that Ramazani is an unbelievable 10, with the way that he nips around players? And what if we discover that Gnonto actually is the 10 they've been wanting all along? I don't know that he is, from the little bits we've seen. I mean, he hasn't got the chance to play the role consistently, so it would be harsh in the extreme to judge. But I think, I don't think Farke is going to suddenly happen upon a new and exciting formula for the number 10 position at this stage of the season. I personally, if somebody said, what is your preferred experimental choice at 10, I'd probably say Tanaka. But then with Ampadu out, like possibly for the rest of the season, then the central midfield options would look slightly lighter if you push Tanaka forward.
I'd like to see Rothwell at the 10.
Really?
Yeah, because I think he brings something in terms of that initial burst of acceleration. I don't think he's capable of sustaining it over lengthy distances, but that initial burst of acceleration can just get you beyond that first man, particularly in between lines. And he's got an eye for a pass. You don't get technique from dead balls like that without being able to wait a pass through. And also, I think Rothwell keeps the ball quite well in that position, which I think might be Farke's reluctance to try Ramazani or Gnonto there for a prolonged period. Because at heart, Rothwell is a centre mid.
Really good point, because he only put Georgie at 10 last season when Georgie showed an improved ability to hold the ball up. That was key to Georgie becoming a 10 at Leeds, was that he could be trusted with the ball being fired into him, that he could roll the defender or hold him off and find someone, or Cruyff turn and gallop away into space.
Which makes complete sense, because when Leeds attack, you've got, as we discussed earlier, you've got Firpo playing essentially as an auxiliary 10 on the left-hand side, or at the very least, he's overlapping. And then you've got Jayden Bogle doing the routine that he and Dan James do. So you've basically got a front six when Leeds are in possession and they're attacking.
Yeah.
If you've got someone at number 10 who's giving up the ball left, right, and centre, and look, I know that Aronson does do that, but maybe not to the extent that Farke is fearful of maybe Gnonto or Ramazani doing so. If you've got somebody in that 10 position who is just giving the ball away a lot, you're opening yourself to a lot of counterattacks, and you don't want your central defenders to be running towards, facing their own goal.
So
I'm glad we've got to the bottom of that. That was a little tactics corner.
Yeah, keep playing Aronson, and if you're not going to play Aronson, probably just play Peru.
Yeah, and if you're feeling like you want a little bit more control in the middle, just stick Rothwell in there.
But if you want to be a bit more exciting, Tanaka.
Okay, right. I mean, going back to the transfers debate, I think, and I maintain this is absolutely what they need in the summer. They need a number 10, big-bodied number 10, somebody who's going to be able to, they might run into dangerous positions, but like Georgie, just able to hold off players for that extra split second longer because they're harder to get around. That's what you need.
Wonder how much Jorginho Rutter would be this summer.
I think they probably demand upwards of £70 million, to be honest.
Yes, probably, because it turns out that he is finishing as well now as creating in the Premier League as well. So he would be he would cost a pretty penny, wouldn't he? Probably a little bit too rich for Leeds United blood, given what else they have to do.
Right, earlier you mentioned Rasmus Christensen, which is the first time his name has been mentioned on this podcast in a while. What is the latest there, Graham? Because obviously there have been reports in Germany that fees have been agreed and whatnot. As we understand it, they're only in talks, Leeds, with Eintracht Frankfurt, where he's currently on loan. But yeah, what's the lay of the land there with Rasmus?
Is expected to leave this summer, so it's only a case of when, not if. And it feels very likely that it'll be Eintracht Frankfurt, because you not only have a club there who want to keep him, they actually want to keep him. You have a player there who probably has found a home and wants to stay there, and they're doing very well for themselves in the Bundesliga. So I just think that one will just happen. It'd be very surprising, actually, if he went somewhere else at this stage. I think it's probably just a case of drilling down into the numbers like an infuriated Theopathetus, and then they'll find a number that fits. And he's gone for good.
That's pretty much it, isn't it? Really. I mean, I feel
There's
like
literally nothing else to say on Rasmus
Yeah.
Christensen that would be worth saying. I mean, he did not have a good time of it at Leeds. He celebrated making a couple of tackles and headers. He didn't pass the ball very well. He charged about. That's about it. It just didn't happen for him at Leeds, and maybe it would have in a better team. I think that's fair to say about a lot of players who were at Leeds during the Premier League. The slide out of the Premier League, should I say? But it didn't happen for him at Leeds, and I don't think there'll be many, if any, tears shed this summer when the succession of loans comes to a permanent conclusion.
I do just want to add a little bit of context to the reports that Florian Plettenberg, the Sky, is he Sky Germany? I feel like he is.
I think so, yeah.
The Sky Germany reporter was saying that negotiations between Eintracht and Leeds were at sort of a £5 million mark, potentially rising to 6.6. I think, speculating here, Plettenberg may have got his information from somebody high up at Eintracht. And given that there was a purchase option pre-agreed in Christensen's loan deal, which is significantly greater than that 5 million fee that Sky Germany have reported, there could be a bit of gamesmanship there on Eintracht's part to maybe try and force the hand and get a bit more of a discounted deal, because I think the purchase option was closer to what Leeds paid for Christensen, which was 11 million. I think just shy of that. So I can see why the sporting directorship at the Bundesliga club would be a bit more open to discussing the specific terms and details of their negotiations with Leeds, which obviously we know
Do you ever think that? Do you ever think it helps? Like, do you think just because a journalist comes out and says it, do you think that makes it happen?
I don't think so. I'd love to think it did. I mean, that would give me a great deal of satisfaction. I think there is maybe a reflection of, okay, well, it's been reported as this in the media. Oh, well, you know what? Why don't we just accept that? I don't think Leeds are inclined to do that whatsoever, but I think it might work with some clubs.
Well, those clubs are stupid. Yep. So Christensen will be gone, and who are we left with then of the loan class of 2023? Jackie Harrison,
Aronson and Wöber.
Yeah, well, Aronson he's a Leeds concern now, isn't he? But and so is Wöber, I suppose. Yeah, so I suppose it's just Jackie Harrison then that there'll be any kind of intrigue over where he's going. I'm gonna stick my neck out here and say I don't see him back at Leeds United.
I don't see that either, considering that Farke has said on numerous occasions, he only wants players at Leeds who want to be at Leeds. And, Harrison has chosen, which is his right, because the terms were in his contract that he signed 2 months before Leeds were relegated, that if... Well, no, it's true. It's a fact. I'm not saying it in a bad way.
Facts. You're just saying facts.
It was signed in April. He signed a fresh 5-year deal that runs until 2028, and it, as far as we understand it, allowed him to go out on loan for as many seasons as Leeds were not in the Premier League. And the 2 seasons that Leeds haven't been in the Premier League, he has chosen to go on loan to Everton, which is fine. It's the best thing for his career, what he deems the best thing for his career. I don't see him staying at Everton.
No.
I mean, he's had an upturn in form recently, definitely. But from speaking to people who know what goes on at Everton, he'll be likely third choice left winger if he were to stay next season, because Iliman and Jai and Dwight McNeil will most likely be preferred. Do Everton? I mean, they need wingers. They don't have enough of them. But do they sign a third left winger? I'm not so sure. Especially not at the price which Leeds are probably going to ask for, given that he does still have 3 years left on his deal, which again is Leeds' right to ask for because he's contracted to the club.
Yeah. I guess, we'll just have to wait and see in the summer if they've got any kind of cordial relationship with whoever's making decisions at Everton.
Yes, there might be a little bit of crossover, which we may have joked about on last week's episode of the pod. I obviously did a piece this week based on noises that had heard that an MLS return could be possible, but again that is contingent on the curtain sort of being called on his Premier League career, because he's made it clear he won't be, or he's made it clear by not preferring to stay at Leeds that he doesn't really want to drop into the Championship. I'm not sure how many other Premier League teams would be in for him next season on the back of his last 2 seasons at Everton. Which then, opens the possibility that he could go abroad in Europe. I think he'd do well in, France or in Italy, for example, or certainly in Spain, because he is a Spanish speaker as well. But obviously he does have roots in the US. He moved over there when he was 14. And I think he'd be quite a coup for the league, which is becoming a bit more minted, shall we say, with
a bit more spendy.
Sales. A bit more what? Sorry,
a little bit more spendy.
A little bit more spendy, yeah.
Yeah, I could see him as a returning poster boy for the MLS. I don't know. I look at his age when I think of that and think, is it too early? Is it? But maybe I'm thinking of it as a retrograde step, and maybe he wouldn't see it like that. I don't know. Yeah, another one to watch. But I think Leeds United's incoming business will be far and away the most exciting and intriguing thing that happens this summer.
This might be a completely, I mean, it is hypothetical, but it might be complete rubbish because he might not be able to do this. But given that Harrison lived in the States from age 14 to when did he move over to City? In 2018. So that was, he lived in 21 at that point. Given that he spent 7 years there, do you reckon there's the chance that he might be able to represent the United States internationally?
As a naturalized?
Yeah,
I have no idea how that would work.
I'm not sure about it, but just because of the timing that he was there previously, he might need to have been a naturalized citizen for the last couple of years to be able to do that. But I'm just thinking with the World Cup next year coming up, if he had a really bumper season for unnamed MLS club,
would they try and bend the law to get him in the USMNT squad? His dream was to play for England in that World Cup. That was his big goal. That's where he wanted to get to, and it was part of the reason why he wanted to be back in the Premier League and not in the Championship. I think because he saw that it hasn't quite happened, because he hasn't shown himself to be England quality yet. I don't know that there wouldn't be a Premier League club that would think he's a player who's played on Premier League level. We can get him for a lot less than you would spend on Premier League wingers, and maybe try and boost his confidence again and get him going again. There's a little bit of a dawn here under Moyes at Everton. Maybe that's the start of something. I don't know. We'll see. I feel like we talked about him long enough, though.
True, very true. I think we have. We should talk about the title race, because last night Burnley defeated Cardiff 2-1 in South Wales. Connor Roberts had a nice little ex-Swansea City. Connor Roberts had a nice little taunt at the Cardiff fans, because there was only 15,000 of them at the Cardiff City Stadium, where obviously Wales play their international fixtures and pack out the 33,000 capacity stadium. He made a joke on his Instagram. It was like, "Bootiful," because obviously he was getting booed. Bootiful win. Nice to get it in front of such a big crowd, or something along those lines.
Sure, he wasn't talking about the Burnley fans.
Well, yeah, I did think that was a little bit risky because Burnley took about 3 minibuses. But I won't. It's a long way to Cardiff. I know
Yeah,
Leeds
you
would
can't
take
you
more.
can't be you can't be digging out traveling fans in a midweek game to travel all the
No,
way to Wales.
least of all
I
you
just
after your newsletter this week.
exactly, but also, can you be digging out home fans at clubs where things have not been altogether very happy, and apathy does set in at clubs, doesn't it? And yeah,
And
I
also, that like a lot of those Cardiff fans will be Connor Roberts supporters when he's wearing the red of Wales at
yeah,
that very stadium. So I don't know. He's a cheeky chappy. We'll let him off for this one. Or at least
you
I
just
will.
love him because he's got a mustache. That's basically the premise of all of this.
No, absolutely not. I believe I sent you something very recently which might have suggested that, you know what, I'm not as high on Connor Roberts as I was previously.
You're very flighty. It's a classic trait of your generation, I suppose.
Fickle, I think is
Very
the word you're
fickle,
looking for.
very
Yeah.
fickle young people these days. No staying power whatsoever. Um,
No,
yeah, the title
yeah,
race.
Burnley,
Burnley,
yeah.
Burnley scoring goals, conceding a goal. Who is this new Burnley?
It was it was fresh, I think, to say the least. I wouldn't say it was an intriguing game. I watched the highlights. I mean, it's just a bit. It was very much match week 35, midweek of the championship season. It was like, oh, there was a game tonight. Yeah. Oh, we won 2-1. Oh, we conceded. Oh, okay. Yeah.
But it does just, if the West Brom game didn't, and Daniel Farke did, I would say he almost bristled at a question about complacency. But with the West Brom result and Farke being the way that he is, the Burnley game just, if Leeds United feet had started to leave the floor ever so slightly, it just roots them very much back down to the turf, doesn't it? Farke was absolutely adamant that there's complacency is not a factor for this team. Certainly given the experience of last season under their belts. And there's no reason to be complacent because it's the championship. Anything can happen. Momentum can change in a second. So yeah, I think it just reinforces for everyone really that there's still a title to be won here. It's not nothing was won at Bramall Lane. It certainly felt like a statement for this team, but it wasn't a league title win. So yeah, plenty more points to be played for. But I certainly think that Leeds have given themselves, with what they've done to date, they've given themselves an unbelievable chance of winning a league title.
It's going to be a little bit uncomfortable at Fratton Park on Sunday, I think, because of what the table will look like before kickoff. So Leeds will go into that one top, but Sheffield United on Saturday have Preston at home. You'd expect them to win that. Burnley have Luton at Turf Moor, which again you'd expect them to win because Luton have picked up 5 points in 17 away games this season.
They have bombed this season, haven't they? They have absolutely, they have soiled the bed this season in a horrendous fashion to be where they are with, as a relegated club from the Prem. But it can happen, like rot can set in, can't it? And then Farkas talked about it at the start of his regime. A team that becomes used to losing can find it very hard to get back into the habit of winning, even if they're coming down from a higher level. So, yes, I would anticipate Luton losing that game 1-0.
Yeah, Sunderland did that in 2017-18. They had double relegation, didn't they?
Good Northeast knowledge. Lovely.
Went down to League One. Darren Bent actually scored the crucial goal for Burton Albion. That sent them down. I believe. You might want to check that one.
I think it might have been.
I think it might have been a 3-2 actually that game. What else was I about to say? Yeah, so the table, the way that it could look, or is probably going to look, is Leeds on 76, Sheffield United on 76, but having played a game more, and Burnley on 74, having played a game more. So it might be a little bit uncomfortable before kickoff, but the best way to just re-establish that breathing room, just go and win. Go and win the game. Beat Portsmouth. That takes us on nicely. What do we expect from this weekend?
From Leeds at Portsmouth.
From everything. This is an everything Leeds United podcast. I mean, do you anticipate parking up at Fratton Park and seeing somebody dropping their kegs and taking a number 2 against the Church? Who knows? Maybe that's just Sheffield.
I had started to move on from that incident, and now I'm having flashbacks again. Flashbacks. Yeah, Portsmouth. Tell you what, since the turn of the year, they've done enough, haven't they, to move themselves away from that bottom 3. And I know it doesn't sound like a lot for a club like Leeds United, but winning 6 games since the turn of the year has done wonders for them. I mean, that's a big haul of points, isn't it? In the bottom half of the table, it's a kind of a big shift, isn't it? So they'd won 3 on the spin. Cardiff, Oxford, QPR, lost at Luton, which is a blow. But they're no mugs, and they also scored 4 goals against Leeds at the start of the season, didn't they?
3.
3 goals, yeah.
Don't know where this 4th came from.
It felt like 4. I'm sure they scored 4. I know that the records show that it was a 3-3 draw,
but it feels like
felt like it did not feel like a win that day. Yeah, they'll have a go certainly at Leeds, and they'll make it difficult. But it's just so simplistic to say it. But it's games like these in which you just whip out your title credentials and just slap them on the table and say, "There you go, lads. They're for all to see." Because it's this time of year when you just need to win games, and yeah, I think Leeds will play accordingly. I just think the way this team is, and I've said it a few times, the way this team responds to a setback, if even you can call West Brom a setback. If I was Daniel Farke, in fact, I'd have been acting furious all week as if a draw at home to West Brom was a terrible setback, because the way his team has responded to each setback this season has been with consecutive wins. They've been so good at bouncing back. So if there's any element at all that Farke can draw on of painting that West Brom game as, this wasn't your best work, lads, so that they then produce their best work against Portsmouth. But it's an early kickoff, and they haven't traditionally liked those this season, have they?
Yeah, but it's the same for both teams. Like, I don't.
Yeah, but for Leeds, it is. But for Leeds in particular, away games, early kickoffs have been tricky.
Maybe call me a cynic, but you should be able to rise above that.
Cynic.
Well, there you go. Right. I'm actually going to give you a bit of analysis here instead. Pompey have scored the most goals of any team, 15th and down in the table. So they are a threat.
Nice.
You've got Josh Murphy. Had to make sure it wasn't his brother Jacob I was going on about there, who is a considerable threat for them on the left flank. He's got 9 assists and 6 goals this season, which are like Leeds United winger numbers. They've got Matt Ritchie. That's a throwback on the other side. He's got 4 goals. Isaac Hayden. Oh, wow. Really good Northeast knowledge here. Is in the centre of midfield. He likes a tackle. But crucially for Portsmouth, they do have Callum Lang out, who is their top scorer. He's got 10 this season. I think he got 3. Did he get a hat-trick at Ellen Road or just 2?
I think he got 2. He got 1 banger, didn't he? Yeah. And did he score the pen?
Yeah, I want to say yes. But yeah, he's out injured, I believe. So that's, a bit of a blow for them.
Elias Sorensen got the other goal.
Elias Sorensen, yeah. You know what's funny? Do you know who he used to play for?
Go on.
He used to play for Newcastle as well.
Did he? So again, Northeast dominated podcast.
So
they have threats.
Yes.
They have Clout. They have Harry Clout in midfield, but looks like he hasn't played actually this season. So,
see, I've got the FOTMob last starting 11 up here, which tells you who's in the manager's thoughts.
Who's doing it?
Yeah. Andre Dozzell in the middle alongside Isaac Hayden. Marlon Pack has moved back. Marlon back to centre half. Marlon centre back.
Marlon at the pack. Yeah.
Yeah. He's alongside, is that Regan Poole? I think it is, yeah. Conor Ogilvie at left back. He's got 4 goals, doing his very best Ginger Firpo impression.
Ginger Firpo. Ginger Firpo is tremendous. That's the title of this week's episode, definitely.
Well, I mean, prior to this, it was going to be Flushbacks. It was a little bit distasteful. Who they got at right back? They got Zach Swanson, I think, ex-Arsenal. He is quite close friends with Sam Greenwood. There's a little bit of trivia from back in the day. And Adil Oshish at number 10, who was on loan from Sunderland, who used to be an absolute gun at youth level and has just not done it at senior football. Who have they got up front? Colby Bishop. He's got 5 goals and 2 assists. I feel like I remember reading a story about him, like health related. I can't remember what it is, so I'm not going to speculate. But he's leading the line for them in Lang's absence. Prediction then. What do we think?
Well, after all that, I'm absolutely convinced that Leeds are going to concede. So I'm going to say Portsmouth 1, Leeds United 2.
I'm going to go 3-1 Leeds.
3-1 Leeds.
Because while Portsmouth have scored a lot, they have also conceded a lot. They average just under 2 concessions per game. So I think against the league's best attack, you'd expect, and they're in good form. They're at home, early kickoff. They'll be up for it, so they might leave spaces.
I'm gonna say that Brendan Aronson scores a goal.
Okay, I'm gonna say Matteo Joseph comes off the bench to clinch it.
Oh, to clinch it in a 3-1 win?
Yeah.
You mean to secure it? To add the insurance?
To add insurance, yeah.
Okay.
I actually won't be at Fratton Park, as you know, Graham, but so the listeners know, unfortunately, as much as I'd like to go to Fratton Park, it'll be my first time there, I have the wedding of some very good friends, which...
You'll be hearing bells of a different manner.
Yes, I'm required to be at instead. So you'll have to let the listeners and the viewers and all the subscribers to the Inside Ellen Road newsletter know what happens down there on the South Coast. I will be watching on Sunday, maybe with a bit of a sore head, different to the type of sore head that Joe Roden gets every weekend. But yeah, we'll just leave it at that, shall we?
Yeah. Is Jayden Bogle going to get a yellow card this weekend?
I certainly hope not, but he is up against Josh Murphy, so have to watch himself.
So you're saying there's a chance?
So you're saying there's a chance. There's always a chance, Graham. That's it from us on the Inside Ellen Road podcast this week. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Thank you for continuing to comment and correct me on my mistakes. I've been Joe Donoghue with Graham Smith. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.